The meeting room of the Galactic Council was vast, an imposing structure built to hold representatives from countless civilizations. Massive screens surrounded the room, displaying holograms of distant star systems, each one home to a different species. But despite the room's grandeur, there was a distinct unease hanging in the air. Enough of this, an alien delegate from the Zithar Empire growled, his three-eyed gaze fixed on the holomap of Earth. Humans have proven themselves dangerous. We have records of their survival, their resistance to threats. We cannot allow this species to grow stronger. Across the table, a representative from the Cinder, a peaceful race known for their intellect, raised a hand. But we cannot ignore the possibility that humanity might be an anomaly, one that in time will self-destruct. Their history is filled with violence, yes, but also with periods of relative peace. Perhaps the threat they pose is not permanent. The Zithar scoffed. Peace. They are only peaceful when they are not threatened. Look at what happened the last time we underestimated them. Their response to our invasion was swift, aggressive. They didn't hesitate to take down our fleet. And now, they have our technology. His voice dropped to a near whisper. They are becoming something we can't control. The tension in the room grew thicker. The idea that a species so young, so primitive compared to the ancient empires of the galaxy, could stand up to their might was a reality no one wanted to accept. For centuries, the Galactic Council had been the undisputed power of the stars, a blend of wisdom, diplomacy, and overwhelming force. But humans, with their resilience and unpredictability, were starting to fracture that image. Perhaps it's not about control, came a voice from the far end of the table, a diplomat from the Keshari Dominion, known for their subtlety. Perhaps humanity's strength is their greatest asset, not their flaw. What if their unpredictable nature is exactly what the galaxy needs? Maybe they could teach us something we've forgotten in our long history of stagnation. The room fell silent, the Keshari's words reverberating throughout the chamber. Was this truly the future they all feared? Could humanity, for all their chaos and strife, be the key to something greater? A deep voice interrupted the silence. An elder from the Urinter people, one of the oldest species in the galaxy. His race had seen the rise and fall of countless civilizations, and yet, his eyes were clouded with concern. We cannot gamble with their rise. We've all seen the reports. They adapt to everything. Every war, every plague, every failure. It's as if they were born to survive, even when it seems impossible. Can we risk allowing them to spread unchecked? If they decide to turn that power against us, we will have no defense. A murmur of agreement rippled through the room. Fear was becoming palpable. The idea that humans could not only survive but thrive under the most extreme circumstances was unsettling. To many of the council members, it was clear that this was no longer a matter of diplomacy or negotiation. It was a matter of survival. And in that moment, the fate of humanity rested on the decisions that would be made in this room. Would they crush the humans before they became too powerful? Or would they risk facing a species that had already proven time and again that nothing could hold them back? The debates would continue for hours, but one thing was undeniable. The galaxy now feared humanity more than ever before, and soon they would have to decide how far they were willing to go to stop a species that had only just begun to show its true strength. The room was still, the tension almost suffocating as the historian from the neutral world of Frethos stood, ready to present his findings. His species had long observed the rise and fall of empires across the galaxy, but humanity, in particular, had intrigued him. The galaxy's most powerful races had dismissed humans as nothing more than a passing curiosity, a species destined to fade into obscurity. But the historian knew better. He tapped the console before him, and a holographic image of Earth appeared, its blue oceans and green continents a stark contrast to the metallic, harsh worlds of the council members. The image shifted, showing snapshots of human history, wars, natural disasters, moments of great tragedy. It was a history of survival against all odds. "Let me tell you the real story of Earth," the historian began, his voice steady but filled with an unsettling knowledge. "You think humanity's strength lies in their technology, their ability to adapt to new environments. But that is only part of the picture. What truly makes humans dangerous is their capacity for resilience. They have faced wars, plagues, and the collapse of entire civilizations. And yet, time and again, they have not only survived but thrived." The hologram shifted again, this time showing scenes from humanity's early history, great empires, massive conflicts, and the rise of technological innovation. The council members shifted uncomfortably in their seats, knowing full well that the humans' early years had been marked by violence and destruction. But what the historian showed next was what truly shook them. "As you can see," he continued, "humanity's greatest strength lies in their ability to unite when the threat is great enough. They've fought brutal wars among themselves for centuries, but when faced with an outside enemy, they often set aside their differences. They were not born into an age of peace like many of us, but their drive to survive forced them to evolve rapidly, to adapt to their ever-changing world." The screen flickered, showing images of humanity's technological rise, first through steam and then through electricity, followed by the explosive growth of the digital age. The most remarkable part, the historian said, is that they did not stop at mere survival. They reached for the stars, breaking free of the confines of their home planet. They expanded into space, rapidly developing the technology to travel between worlds, to communicate across vast distances, and to fight back against threats both internal and external. The room was silent. The council members looked around at one another, their unease growing. "And what of the invaders?" asked the representative from the Wivori Dominion, his voice a mixture of curiosity and dread. The historian nodded. "Humanity has faced invasion twice, both times by species far more advanced than they were. The first came from the Zithar, who saw Earth as an easy target. But humanity fought back with unexpected ferocity, using guerrilla tactics and weapons that they had developed only through necessity. It was not their technology that saved them, but their refusal to yield, their ability to think beyond what was known." Another image flashed onto the screen, an alien fleet, burning in space as Earth's forces, though vastly outnumbered, fought back with ruthless efficiency. And the second time, the historian continued, humanity faced a far greater threat, the XL Terry. The XL Terry arrived with weapons of mass destruction, believing they could wipe humanity out in a single strike. But once again, humans fought back, not just with weapons, but with their ingenuity. The XL Terry underestimated them. They believed humans were too weak to fight back, but humanity had a weapon they didn't understand: willpower. The historian paused, allowing the gravity of his words to sink in. You may ask yourselves, why are they so resilient? What is it about humanity that makes them survive when others would perish? It is their capacity for unity, their unwillingness to accept defeat. And more than that, they have a unique ability to learn from their failures, to use every loss as a stepping stone toward something greater. As the hologram faded, the historian turned his gaze to the council members. What you fear is not their technology. It is their relentless pursuit of survival, their drive to not just endure but to conquer. And that is something none of you, in all your ages and wisdom, can truly understand. Humanity's story is not one of mere survival. It is one of unstoppable determination. The room was still once more, but this time the silence was filled with the weight of the historian's words. Every member of the council now understood the true danger humanity posed, not just to their empires, but to the very fabric of the galaxy itself. The Zithar Empire had long considered themselves the supreme force in the galaxy. Their fleets, vast and highly advanced, had conquered countless worlds, and their military strategy was unparalleled. When they turned their gaze toward Earth, they saw only an underdeveloped planet, a primitive species that could be easily crushed. Their victory seemed inevitable, and the Emperor himself ordered the fleet to prepare for a swift invasion. On the eve of the assault, the Zithar commanders gathered in their war council discussing the final steps before their invasion force would launch. The planet was teeming with life, but its technology was nowhere near their own. The humans had no defense against their advanced weaponry. The plan was simple: wipe out any form of resistance, establish dominance, and then extract what resources they needed. But they had made one grave mistake, one they would pay dearly for. As the fleet approached Earth's atmosphere, the Zithar began their bombardment. Massive ships unleashed devastating lasers, reducing cities to rubble. The humans, though technologically inferior, had no choice but to fight back. They scrambled, launching every form of counterattack they could muster: outdated fighter jets, crude rockets, and even homemade explosives. But then something unexpected happened. The humans fought back with an intensity that caught the invaders off guard. The Zithar had underestimated the human spirit, their willingness to do anything to defend their home. They had assumed humans would cower in fear, but instead they rallied. It wasn't just a fight for survival. It was a fight for their very existence. The battle raged for days. The humans had no chance against the Zithar fleet's superior firepower, but they didn't need to match it. Instead, they used tactics the Zithar had never encountered. Humans attacked in small groups, using the terrain of their planet to their advantage. They launched guerrilla strikes, sabotaging Zithar supply lines and undermining their command structures. The Zithar fleet, at first certain of their victory, soon realized the true cost of this conflict. Their ships, though technologically superior, were being worn down by the constant barrage of human ingenuity. The humans adapted faster than they could react, exploiting every weakness in the invaders' ships. Zithar soldiers on the ground found themselves overwhelmed by ambushes and traps set by humans who had never faced an enemy of this scale but were willing to learn quickly. The turning point came when a group of human engineers, working in secret, managed to reverse engineer a piece of Zithar technology, a communication device that allowed them to hack into the fleet's command systems. Using this, they fed false information to the Zithar commanders, causing confusion and disarray in their ranks. The Zithar began firing upon their own ships, unable to discern friend from foe. What was supposed to be a swift, easy victory turned into a humiliating defeat. In a last-ditch effort to salvage their campaign, the Zithar fleet attempted to regroup, but it was too late. The humans had destroyed their command ship, crippling their coordination. The remaining Zithar forces, now in disarray, retreated from Earth, leaving behind a broken but resilient planet. The humans had won, but the cost was immense. Their cities lay in ruins, many lives had been lost, and Earth's landscape was scared. But they had sent a message that would echo through the galaxy. Humanity would never bow down, and they would never surrender. Across the stars, word of the humans' unexpected victory spread like wildfire. The Zithar Empire, once the most feared force in the galaxy, had been humiliated by a species they thought too weak to resist. And in that moment, the galaxy realized something that would soon become undeniable. Humanity was no longer the insignificant, primitive species they had once believed. They were a force to be reckoned with, and the rest of the galaxy. They would have to decide if they were ready for what was to come next. The news of humanity's unexpected victory over the Zithar Empire spread like wildfire throughout the galaxy. Some alien species watched with disbelief, while others began to stir with concern. The human race, once considered an insignificant speck in the vastness of space, had just humiliated one of the most powerful empires in the galaxy. But for humanity itself, this victory was only the beginning. In the aftermath of the invasion, Earth began the long process of rebuilding. Cities that had been reduced to rubble were slowly restored, and new technologies were brought to life using remnants of the Zithar technology left behind in the wake of their retreat. What the invaders had not counted on was the brilliance of human engineers and scientists. Where the Zithar had seen a primitive species, humanity saw opportunity. Humanity's finest minds went to work, reverse engineering the alien technology that littered the planet. They had learned quickly from the first encounter. And now, They were able to replicate and even improve upon the advanced systems they had captured. What was once thought to be impossible, traveling between stars, advanced energy weapons, and shields, soon became part of humanity's growing arsenal. But it wasn't just the technology that changed. The war had transformed humanity in ways no one could have predicted. The once divided nations on Earth, which had been embroiled in conflict for centuries, now found themselves united in a common cause: survival. Governments formed new alliances, pooling resources and knowledge to face the larger threats beyond their world. Old rivalries were set aside, replaced by a shared purpose to not just rebuild, but to rise stronger than ever before. Within a few short years, humanity's technological progress outpaced anything the galaxy had seen before. Earth's first spacecraft, once crude and slow, had evolved into sleek, efficient ships capable of faster-than-light travel. The Zithar's once impenetrable force fields had been studied, modified, and integrated into human defenses. Earth's military, though still small compared to the galaxy's most powerful armies, was now better equipped than most. But the true turning point came when humanity began to enhance themselves. Scientists, driven by the need to protect their species, began experimenting with genetic modifications and cybernetic enhancements. The first generation of augmented humans was born, not only stronger and faster, but also more intelligent, capable of mastering technologies that would have been unimaginable just a few years before. These augmented humans became the vanguard of Earth's new spacefaring civilization, leading missions to explore distant star systems, making contact with alien races, and defending the planet from any new threats that dared approach. In a bold move, humanity launched their first deep space exploration mission beyond the borders of their home system. With a new fleet of warships and exploration vessels, humans ventured into the unknown, eager to claim their place among the stars. Earth was no longer just a planet to be feared. It was now a world that would shape the future of the galaxy. As humanity's influence spread, so did their reputation. The alien species that once dismissed them as weak and unworthy of notice now watched in awe and fear as humans advanced at an unimaginable rate. The message was clear. Humanity had not only survived an invasion, but had turned the aftermath into a rallying cry for their future. No longer would they hide in the shadows of galactic empires. No longer would they bow to the whims of others. Humanity had earned its place in the galaxy. The Galactic Council, still reeling from the defeat of the Zithar fleet, could no longer ignore the rising power of Earth. Some members feared the worst, that humanity's rise would bring about a new age of war and conquest. Others saw potential in this new force, perhaps a new ally that could help balance the power dynamics of the galaxy. But for now, the galaxy was holding its breath, waiting to see what humanity would do next. And for the first time in centuries, humanity wasn't asking for permission. They were simply moving forward, unchallenged and unafraid. The galaxy watched, hesitant and unsure, as humanity's influence spread far beyond their home world. The once backward species, so easily dismissed by the galaxy's elite civilizations, was now asserting itself on a scale that many could hardly believe. The Galactic Council had been divided from the start. Some saw humanity's rise as a threat, while others believed it could be a new chapter of opportunity. What no one could deny was that humanity was no longer a species to ignore. The first official contact came when a fleet of human warships entered the Cinder system. The Cinder, a peaceful race known for their wisdom and diplomatic skills, had long been an advocate for unity and cooperation in the galaxy. They had watched humanity's recovery with a mix of curiosity and apprehension. Their initial fears were not based on the humans' violent nature. They had already seen that humanity was capable of great diplomacy and intelligence, but rather on the speed of their development. No species had ever risen so quickly, and that was what made the Cinder nervous. A meeting was arranged, one that would be broadcast across the galaxy. The Cinder ambassador, a tall figure with translucent skin, stood before a room full of eager and wary representatives. Among them were members from the Zithar Empire, who had yet to recover from their humiliating defeat at the hands of the humans. The Cinder began the discussion by introducing the human ambassador, a seasoned diplomat named Jonathan Ford. Ford, calm and composed, entered the room with a purposeful stride. His attire was simple, reflecting the no-nonsense approach humanity had adopted since their victory. His mission was not to negotiate for power or land. It was to introduce Earth as a new member of the galactic community. Humanity sought to participate, to learn, and yes, to contribute. "Good evening, representatives," Ford began, his voice steady and authoritative. "I come not as a conqueror, but as a fellow species eager to engage with others across the stars. Earth has been through much, and while our past may be full of struggle and conflict, we stand here today, offering peace, cooperation, and mutual growth." His words were measured, carefully chosen, but there was an undeniable strength in his tone. It was clear to the Council that humanity wasn't asking for permission to join the galactic community. They were simply stating a fact. Earth was here, and they were ready to become part of the greater galactic order. The reaction from the Zither representatives was immediate and filled with disdain. The memory of their fleet's destruction at the hands of humans was still fresh. A Zither general stood, his 6 clawed hands resting on the table, and sneered at Ford. "You speak of cooperation, human, but you have proven yourselves to be little more than a dangerous, unpredictable force. Do you truly expect us to sit at the same table with a species that has destroyed entire fleets?" Ford met the Zither's gaze without flinching. "We have no intention of destroying anything. Our victory over your fleet was not a desire for conquest. It was survival. We fought to protect our world, our people. But if you wish to speak of the past, let me remind you, you invaded our home, without provocation, without warning. The consequences of your actions were yours, not ours." The room fell silent. Ford's response had been measured, but his words carried weight. The Zither representatives, though unwilling to admit it, knew the truth. Humanity had fought back with a ferocity and precision they hadn't expected. The human race had become something they could no longer dismiss. As the meeting continued, the Cinder representatives watched closely, aware of the fine line humanity walked. On one hand, they presented a vision of peace and collaboration, but there was an undeniable undertone of strength in their words. Humanity wasn't naive. They understood the galaxy's dangers, and they were more than capable of protecting themselves. As the meeting concluded, Jonathan Ford left the chamber with a quiet confidence. He had done what he came to do. He had shown the galaxy that Earth would not be a passive observer. They would no longer be the weak species in the shadows. The future of humanity was one of leadership, not subjugation. Outside, in the corridors, representatives from various species discussed amongst themselves. The question that hung in the air was no longer if humanity could join the galactic community. It was how the galaxy would respond to the unstoppable force that Earth had become. The meeting with the Cinder had been only the beginning. Word of humanity's bold move to establish themselves within the galactic community spread quickly, sparking a wave of reactions across the galaxy. Some species, like the Othrians, a race of insectoid traders, saw opportunity in humanity's newfound strength. Others, like the Valkor Empire, considered humanity's rise an affront to their centuries of dominance. But despite the mixed reactions, one thing was clear: the balance of power in the galaxy was shifting. Back on Earth, the pace of change had accelerated. With access to advanced technologies previously thought unattainable, humanity was no longer just rebuilding their world. They were reinventing it. The governments of Earth, now united under a global coalition, began setting their sights on the stars in a way they had never dared before. No longer content with mere survival, they began to develop expansive colonies on nearby planets. The first to be settled was Mars, transformed into a thriving colony, complete with terraforming projects, cities, and even a burgeoning economy based on both human ingenuity and alien resources. On Earth, leaders across the planet debated the next steps. Jonathan Ford, having successfully represented Earth in the Galactic Council, returned to Earth to brief the world's leaders. The discussions were intense. While many recognized that humanity's power had grown, they also understood the risks. The galaxy was a vast and dangerous place, full of species who had centuries of experience in warfare, diplomacy, and survival. Humanity might have risen quickly, but they were still newcomers. The galaxy will never accept us without question, Ford warned the assembly of leaders. We may have gained some respect, but we are still seen as a threat by many. We have to show them that we aren't just strong, but capable of peace. We must walk the line between power and diplomacy carefully. As Ford spoke, a report came in from a human exploration vessel that had recently entered the Zaboth system, an uncharted region on the edge of human space. The vessel's sensors had picked up something extraordinary. The Zaboth system was home to a rare and highly valuable resource, a substance capable of powering advanced weapons and ships at unimaginable levels. The catch: the system was already claimed by the Valkor Empire. The Valkor were known for their ruthless expansionism, and their fleet was one of the most formidable in the galaxy. Any attempt to claim the Zaboth system would be seen as an act of war. But the resource was too valuable to ignore. Ford stood at the center of the meeting, considering the implications. "We could negotiate," Ford said, after a long pause. "But we must be prepared to back up our words with action if necessary. If the Valkor refuse to cooperate, we may not have a choice but to take the system by force." The decision was made. Humanity would send a diplomatic envoy to the Valkor to attempt peaceful negotiations. If that failed, their military might be called into action. It was a bold move, one that would test humanity's resolve. With the newfound resources from their encounters with alien technology, Earth's fleet had grown stronger, faster, and more dangerous. Yet, the leaders were aware that this was not simply a military conflict. It was a test of humanity's place in the galaxy. As the envoy prepared to depart, a final message arrived from the Cinder, a species who had been watching humanity's rapid development with both admiration and trepidation. "We extend our hand in friendship," the message said, "but we caution you. The galaxy will not forgive aggressors. Move too quickly, and you may find yourselves alone." It was a warning humanity could not ignore. Earth's leaders realized that their actions in the coming days would set the tone for their future in the galaxy. Their next move would determine whether they could maintain their newfound strength, or whether they would ignite a conflict that could engulf the galaxy in war. The time had come. Humanity's emissaries, led by Jonathan Ford, were preparing for what would be their most significant diplomatic mission yet. Their target was the Valkor Empire, one of the galaxy's oldest and most feared powers. The Valkor had built their empire through ruthless conquest, their military might unmatched by most species. Now, humanity was stepping into their territory, seeking to claim a system that the Valkor had long considered their own. Ford stood at the helm of the human delegation's flagship, staring out at the vast expanse of space. The Zaboth system was in their sights, a system rich with resources that could fuel humanity's future, a system that the Valkor had guarded fiercely for centuries. They were about to send a message, one way or another, that the galaxy would remember. The human fleet, though not as large as the Valkor's, was far from helpless. With advanced human technology and the fleet's newfound strength, humanity was a force to be reckoned with. But Ford understood the stakes. A conflict with the Valkor would be catastrophic. It was not a war humanity wanted, but it was one they might be forced into. As they neared the Valkor capital ship, a massive vessel of blackened metal and glowing red lights, Ford's comms officer relayed the final transmission from the Valkor. "Your presence here is unwelcome, humans," came the cold voice of Valkor's supreme commander, General K'tar. "Leave now, or we will make you leave." Ford stood tall and composed. His mind raced, knowing that the next few moments would determine the course of history. He tapped his communicator. "We are not here to conquer," Ford's voice echoed through the comms. "We seek only what is ours by right." The Zaboth system contains resources we need for the survival of our people. We come in peace, but we will not be turned away. I hope we can resolve this without conflict." The silence that followed was thick with tension. The Valkor fleet was waiting, their weapons primed and their ships poised for battle. Ford knew they wouldn't back down easily. General Qatar was known for his pride and his empire's willingness to crush any who dared challenge their authority. But humanity had never been one to shy away from difficult choices. Then, Qatar responded, his voice full of disdain. "You misunderstand, human. The Valkor do not negotiate. The Zaboth system is ours. Leave now, or you will regret your arrogance." Ford's jaw tightened. The peaceful solution had failed. There would be no diplomacy here. His hands rested on the control panel, silently giving orders to his fleet. The time for words had ended. "We will not retreat," Ford said firmly. "Prepare for combat." The moment the words left his mouth, the human fleet moved into position. Their ships, sleek and deadly, began their coordinated maneuvers, outflanking the Valkor forces. The opening salvo from the Valkor hit first, massive laser beams tearing through the void, striking one of the human warships. The ship groaned but held together, its shields absorbing the brunt of the impact. The return fire was swift. A volley of energy missiles from humanity's fleet aimed directly at the Valkor's capital ship. The battle erupted in full force. Both fleets traded heavy blows, ships rocked by energy blasts as both sides fought for control. The Valkor's superiority in numbers was clear, but humanity's agility and new technology made them a formidable adversary. Human warships darted between the Valkor's massive ships, striking with pinpoint precision before disappearing into the darkness of space, only to reappear on the other side of the battlefield. On the flagship, Ford watched the unfolding chaos. His eyes flicked between the battle reports and the viewports. Despite the violence around them, humanity's fleet was holding its own. The odds were against them, but they weren't backing down. He knew that they had one shot at this. Either the Valkor would realize that humanity was serious about claiming their place, or they would push humanity into a war that could reshape the galaxy. As the fight continued, a blaring alarm signaled a breach in the outer hull of the flagship. Ford's heart raced as he turned to his crew. The Valkor had pushed their offensive to the limit. But humanity's fleet was relentless. They fought as though they had nothing left to lose. Because they did. They were fighting not just for resources, but for their future, for their place in the galaxy. Ford turned to the comms officer. "Send a message to the Valkor. Tell them they can either negotiate or face total destruction." There was no turning back now. The human fleet had drawn a line in the sand, and they would not retreat from it. The battle raged on in the dark void of space, with human and Valkor fleets locked in a brutal confrontation. The human ships, though outnumbered, displayed a relentless resolve, their sleek forms darting across the battlefield like predators, taking full advantage of their advanced technologies. Each strike was precise, each maneuver calculated. The Valkor fleet, despite its overwhelming size and firepower, found itself facing an enemy that would not relent. Jonathan Ford stood at the command center of the human flagship, his expression grim but determined. Around him, the crew worked with a sense of urgency. The bridge was alive with activity, the hum of machinery and the occasional shrill of alarms filling the air. Despite the chaos, Ford remained calm. His mind raced with strategies, calculating every move of the battle. He had fought for humanity's survival before, but this felt different. This wasn't just a war for Earth, it was a war for their future among the stars. "Report," Ford barked, turning to his chief tactical officer, Commander Ashipatel. "Sir, we've sustained moderate damage to the outer hull. Shields are holding, but for how long we don't know. The Valkor are pushing hard. Our flanks are exposed," Paddle replied, her voice steady despite the tension. "We need to make a decisive move, or they'll wear us down." Ford glanced at the tactical map displayed on the screen. The Valkor fleet was massive, but the humans had something they didn't: agility and superior technology. But time was running out. The human fleet had taken heavy casualties, and their resources were dwindling. The Valkyr, relentless as always, continued to press forward. "Target the Valkyr flagship," Ford said, his voice cold with purpose. "Prepare a full strike. We break their command. We break their will." Patel nodded, her fingers flying over the controls as she relayed the orders. The human fleet's warships began to maneuver into position, their weapons locking onto the massive Valkyr capital ship at the center of the enemy formation. As the first round of energy missiles launched toward the Valkyr flagship, Ford watched, his breath steady. The human fleet's precision was unmatched, their strikes timed perfectly, each one hitting with devastating accuracy. Explosions rocked the Valkyr flagship, its shields flickering under the barrage. The tides of battle began to turn. But the Valkyr were not easily deterred. Their retaliation was swift and brutal. A massive blast from the Valkyr flagship hit one of the human destroyers, sending it spiraling into the void. Another explosion, another casualty. Ford's gut twisted, but he refused to flinch. The stakes were too high. Humanity's survival was too important. Suddenly, the communications console buzzed with an urgent signal. Ford turned to see the message flashing on the screen, an emergency transmission from the Cinder. He tapped the console, and the face of the Cinder ambassador appeared on the screen, his translucent features etched with concern. "Ambassador Ford," the Cinder said, his voice tight, "we are monitoring the situation. The Valkyr fleet is too strong. If this conflict escalates, it could destabilize the entire sector. We urge you to consider." Ford didn't let him finish. "We've already made our choice, Ambassador. The Valkyr won't back down, and neither will we. We will fight until the last ship." He cut the transmission without waiting for a reply. The Cinder meant well, but humanity had no choice now. It was all or nothing. They had to break the Valkyr's dominance, or they would be swallowed up by it. As the final wave of missiles tore into the Valkyr flagship's hull, the massive ship finally began to buckle. Its shields faltered, and its weapon systems went offline. The once proud Valkyr flagship, the symbol of their empire, was now a burning wreck, its once imposing silhouette flickering on the edge of the battlefield. The Valkyr fleet hesitated. The tide had shifted. Ford's heart pounded in his chest, and for the first time in the battle, he allowed himself a breath. This wasn't over, but they had taken the first step toward victory. A transmission crackled through the comms. It was General Qatar's voice, low and venomous. "You've won this round, human," Qatar growled. "But remember this. The Valkyr do not forget. We will return. And when we do, you will regret ever crossing us." Ford didn't respond immediately. He knew this wasn't the end. The Valkyr would regroup, rebuild, and come for humanity again. But now, humanity had made a statement. They were no longer the weak, helpless species they had once been. They had earned their place in the galaxy, and no one could take that away. The battle wasn't over, but humanity had won the first victory of their new era. And that was enough.